Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, the Global Sports Podcast Network and the Daily Newcastle team proudly present to you episode 116 of the Daily Newcastle Podcast. And it is Wildcard Wednesday. And in case you haven't been able to tell just yet, your host for this episode is none other than me, M to the A to the G, Michael Grahamslaw. But Who am I joined by today? I'm joined by the lovely but devilsome duo of Joanne and Kev. How's it going, Joe?
Okay, Michael, that's excellent. I love it. M to the A to the G, man. That's brilliant. You win. You win on intros. That's it. However, I'm dying for Kev to speak because he's got a mouthful of donut. Come on, Kev, spit it out.
Yeah, I was giving him a bit of time.
Oh, he's good. Look at that.
Unbelievable.
How are you doing, Kev? How was the donut?
Donut was amazing. Shout out to Greg's if you want to give me a sponsorship personally. I'll eat a donut every episode.
Wow.
But I've been running around, so I've got to eat on the go. This is life now. It's all good. I'm very happy, very excited for a Wildcard Wednesday, which I've been shunned from. So,
well, hopefully I don't disappoint because I've got a corker of an episode lined up today, and we're going to start off. Well, it's the final episode that we're actually going to be able to talk about transfers. So, with the signings Newcastle have made under Eddie Howe, I do just want to get a very quick summary on whether they've been a hit or a miss. So that's the first game we're going to play, and obviously we can expand a little bit on the ones that aren't obvious. So speaking of obvious, I'll throw some softballs to start off. For the first 10, Joe, can you go first? And then, Kev, you'll follow up. Just a hit or a miss. Kieran Trippier.
Oh, well, huge hit. Out of the park. Home run.
yeah, brilliant hit. Everything about that bloke, leadership qualities when he first came, amazing.
Absolutely. And I said I was going to throw softballs, and it doesn't get any softer than that. But Chris Wood.
Right. It was obviously a miss for us, which is a real shame because he's been a massive hit for Forest, hasn't he? So, yeah. Unfortunately for us. But you know what? He did kind of serve a purpose to a degree. He just didn't get the goals we wanted him. But it's got to be classed as a miss, hasn't it?
Miss, probably the worst striker I've ever seen wear the black and white stripes apart from Rondon.
What?
Horrendous.
Rondon?
No, Kev.
Rondon was awful as well. Just bobbled
get
him into
off.
the net.
Rondon was
You're sacked.
fantastic. You're having a laugh.
I'm not. I didn't like Rondon. I thought Chris Wood was hopeless. Wood would just run around. And even when a cross did come into the box, he was nowhere near it. He's been brilliant for Forest, but I just do not understand how that's happened.
Right, I could agree with the comparison of Emmanuel Riviere and Chris Wood at the time, but Rondon, absolutely not. But
I didn't like Rondon. Sorry.
well, we've
We're
established
way off here now.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'm going to maintain professionalism. We've got one hit, one miss to start off. Bruno Guimaraes.
Well, another home run hit. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolute quality.
For obvious reasons.
Massive hit.
Very obvious. Dan Burn.
The hit that nobody realised was going to be a hit. That's what he is.
Absolutely.
Yep.
What do you think,
hit
Ed?
which nobody expected, like where that came. It was like Crazy Frog. Crazy Frog was a
Everyone
hit.
thought it was going to be a
Nobody
miss.
knows how. Dan Burn is a huge hit in. Again, what a lad. Love him.
I feel like Dan Burn's a little bit less annoying than the Crazy Frog.
Oh yeah. I just meant like nobody saw that being
Dances a bit
becoming
like
big.
him, that weird
He
dance.
dances the same as Crazy Frog.
Well, I'm going to swiftly move on from Dan Burn's dancing and go to Matt Target. Excellent while on loan.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh, you know, I'm going to say a hit mainly because, just hear me out. It's really down to the fact that of his injury record with us that we're going to think of him as a miss because he has then put in some decent performances for us. So I'm going to be nice to him. I'm going to say if we're purely going hit or miss here, he's not an entire miss, is he?
Was not
People
expecting
will
that.
be screaming at me saying I don't know what I'm talking about at this point. I
Yeah.
totally appreciate that, but why
I
not?
might agree.
You know?
Yeah, I'd agree as well.
Let's get some reactions on the go.
I think it's a miss. I think.
I feel sorry for him.
I
do.
think
I know.
his loan spell was really good, but after that, it's almost like he was playing for a contract, and he got the move, and he got the contract, and then even when he did play, he didn't look anything near what he was
He
when
didn't
he
get
was
injured on
loan. So
purpose.
it's a miss for me.
You know what I mean?
And he's on high wages. I think he's on around 70 to 80 grand a week, and you just think, God, that could be so much better.
That part's a miss, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on, Nick Pope.
We've got to stay
In the
hit.
middle of
I know everyone's like saying that they want Dubs to be remaining and Pope not to just come back from his injury, but for what has happened with Pope ever since we've signed him, he's a hit. Very big hit.
Yeah, probably a hit, but not as big as what people think. I don't know. Or I feel like not as big as what other people would say, but I think he is a hit. But I mean, £10 million, and then look at the appearances you've got out of him and clean sheets out of him.
It's a bargain.
I think you have to say
He's been a bargain, hasn't he?
Yeah, 100%. And I love the part that wasn't sheets that you'd said then.
Clean sheets, clean sheets. Loads of clean sheets for £10 million. Well done.
Exactly, absolutely fantastic. To be fair, what I was going to say is the injuries may have let him down a little bit, and obviously the injury for the cup final wasn't great. Injury record isn't great. If we can sort of end up with him off the books with a similar price tag, 100% a hit in my opinion, so I'd agree. Sven Botman and Alexander Isak, I think they're both going to be hits.
Yeah. Isak more so, though, because
Isak
we haven't had
definitely a
enough
hit.
out of Botman. That's the thing. We haven't had enough of Botman just because of his massive injury again. Not his fault. But we haven't had enough of Botman yet. That's all.
Yeah,
But
Botman, I'd probably say Botman's a hit, but I'm probably undecided. I know he had that great season. His first season was brilliant. And then I was like, right, he's got his first season out of the way. Some strikers will start to figure him out. And then he just got injured, and we haven't really seen the best of him. I know he played in between them, but he was playing injured, so I don't want to hold that against him too much. But yeah, a hit, but could be a miss in about 5 years' time.
I know what you're talking about, Kev. I do agree
Interesting. Yankuba Minte.
Well,
massive hit. PSR.
Biggest hit.
Never played a game.
Money-wise, he's like that, yeah.
Right, and we got 30 million for him. Huge hit. Cheers, Yankuba.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Just good that we didn't at least get to see him in black and white a bit.
Yeah,
see what
it's one of those. It looks like such a raw talent that, particularly with how many people think we need another right winger, which Almiron's going to go and he's probably not going to be replaced. So that tells you everything of how we need a right winger. But I think he would have been fantastic for the team. Now, moving on to the other flank, Harvey Barnes, hit or miss?
I know what Kev's going to say here. Go on, Kev.
I've been saying it for ages. When nobody else was, I was saying this. I'll let you go first, though, Joe, because that's the rules.
But it's fine. But I do agree with what you're about to say because I know exactly how you feel. He's kind of a hit, but not entirely. Because, I think... I don't know. He's right in the middle. He's not a hit or a miss.
Nah, he's a miss.
He's right on the fence. He's
a miss.
all over the shop.
He's a miss. £40 million. He's a great finisher, don't get me wrong. He's brilliant when he cuts inside, but I don't really see him beat a man. I don't see him do much, really. And for me, I expected so much more when we signed him.
I'd agree.
And I just think for £40 million, and again, probably the wages he's on, we've got Gordon. I know Gordon, when he was signed, was supposed to be a right winger because when you look at the background of the day Gordon signed him, a presentation we showed him, people found he was a right winger and Barnes was made for the left. But yeah, he's a miss. He just hasn't done enough for me, unfortunately. Good impact player. I would keep him for the bench, but I think the way we are at the minute with PSR, we could do with getting some money for him rather than just keeping him for the bench.
We need to at least get the money back from him, though, surely.
I'd accept 35, 5 million loss. I would accept it. Get the wages. Get 35 million in.
I think it's a tough one because he has all the potential to be fantastic. It just hasn't really worked out for him at Newcastle. But speaking of players who have recently signed and it maybe hasn't worked out for as much as what they maybe would have hoped, the final one is Lloyd Kelly. Hit or miss so far?
I don't think we've seen enough of him. I'm still on the fence about him. Yeah. He's still young and I still think he's got potential, but it's all guesswork. He hasn't played enough for us. He's had some good games, he's had some bad games. So again, I'm going to have to sit right in the middle with Lloyd Kelly. I can't. Yeah. I wouldn't want to class him as a miss, but you can't class him as a hit. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, I don't know.
I'm going to answer, because Michael added at the end of that so far. I think so far probably a miss, but it's not his fault. I just think he hasn't had the opportunity to play and get a regular run of games. But is it is it really a miss because he's on a free? And even if we sell it for 15 million, the profitability there again is very clever. So performance-wise so far, I would say miss, but we haven't seen him. He needs an opportunity, but I hope he never gets one because I want Hall to stay fit, I want Botman to stay fit, and I want Shaw to stay fit. So miss so far, but I still think he was a very good player in there.
Yeah, 100%. I'd agree. I think the only thing that puts me off with Kelly is the wage. Obviously, you sign a player on a free transfer, the wage is obviously going to be a bit higher. But if you sign them on a free, sell them after a year or two, that wage doesn't really come too much into the equation. It could be fantastic. But I think we saw against Chelsea, all the potentials there.
In the cup, he had a great game.
Yeah.
Exactly. Absolutely fantastic. But we've also seen the worst of them. So there were plenty of other players I could have mentioned. Karius, Kual, Lewis Hall for a hit, Tino Livramento for a hit. Could have mentioned the new Greek keeper, Odysseus Vlachiminos. Demos,
clean sheet against England.
Did you say Vlachiminos?
Yeah. Might as well have said Nikos Dabby's ass, to be honest.
You're coming out with some great ones tonight, I'll give you that.
Yeah. I butchered that a little bit, but I'll own it. Vlachiminos, should I say. But yeah, there's been so many more hits than misses. And sort of what I wanted to bring with that is, it's very frustrating having the transfer window and not having people come through. But what we are finding is that we do have more hits than misses. And when the misses have come, they've been bad. But when the hits have come, they've been absolutely phenomenal. And speaking of phenomenal, it's about time we go to our first advert of the evening.
Oh, donut time.
This time from Zencaster.
While Kev eats his donut, I'll do this one, eh? Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencaster came out the clear winner with 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs. It's super easy to start a podcast, it sounds great, and it's delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencaster.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much, Joanne. What do you think about that, Kev?
Speak now.
He knew that was coming, it's fine.
Yummy.
And we are back. So the second and third parts are going to be a bit more of a combined venture, and they're actually going to populate the next project for our social media. So be sure to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, X, FaceB, the TikToker, and whatever else the kids are using these days, because who knows. But what I do know is that in the Premier League era, Newcastle United have had 15 permanent managers, and it feels like that's the perfect number to dissect and create our rankings from best to worst.
Wow.
Or should I say worst to best? So we're doing Premier League era because if anyone can tell me about the playing style of Frank Watt, I'll be amazed. But quite frankly, I don't know.
Frank was very direct. He liked the good inverted wingers to help out with central midfielders. But yeah, big Frank. Good coach.
All right,
Frank.
Where would you rank him? Number one. I've actually already done a little bit of a seeding platform myself, so it didn't take too long. So I've pulled together a bottom 5 and a top 10. Obviously, there is room for manoeuvre. But Steve Bruce, Sam Allardyce, Steve McLaren, Joe F. Kinnear, and John Carver. And to fit into this list, it had to be full-time managers with over 10 games played. So out of the 5 names there, I want you to start me off with a manager that you both think was the best manager out of those 5. So they would sit in 11th out of Bruce, Allardyce, McLaren, Kinnear, and Carver.
Carver was the one that stated that he said he was the best manager.
Coach in the world, isn't he?
Yeah, so he's got to be the best, surely, based on his massive head that he's got. Oh, God.
Well, we're saying managers, not coaches, so we'll give him a bit of leeway. We'll give him a little bit of leeway, Big John, because best coach in the world. But who was saying?
I've had a bit of a think. I've had another bite of donut.
Go on, then.
I'm ready to answer this.
He's on now.
Powered him up.
Wow.
This is going to be really unpopular. I'm just going to come out and say it. The best out of them, in my opinion, is Steve Bruce.
Yeah.
You had Mike Ashley, 0 money to work with, absolute crap squad. We literally only had Maxi, maybe Willock when he first came on loan, and nothing else. We just didn't have a team. And you know what? I think we finished, correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, because I haven't looked this up, but I think we finished like 13th,
Around
13th,
there, yeah.
maybe 12th and something else. And you know what? He had absolutely no money. Zero money. Don't get me wrong, the playing style was crap, but out of him, he was much better. I was going to put Allardyce, but Allardyce had like Belazoglu, Emery, Michael Owens, Scott Parker. He had a great team. He had Damien Duff, Nobby Solano. So, personally, I don't understand how on earth I can put Allardyce above Bruce when Bruce had an absolute dire squad. And Allardyce...
Yeah, but Allardyce wasn't really one manager for very long, though. We had Bruce much longer.
Bolton with Obafemi Martin scoring like an overhead kick. And I thought, Allardyce is a genius. But then it was just because it was his old club and he knew everything about him, so he looked brilliant.
But we only had is my memory serving me wrong? Did we only have Allardyce for half a season, though?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not
he
like...
He got sacked almost immediately.
He did, because he loves that.
Yeah, but he only got sacked. Let's remember about Allardyce as well. He only got sacked because of a change of ownership. Ashley wanted to bring in Kevin Keegan. So I think, personally, I would go Bruce top, and then I'd probably go Allardyce second. I mean, after that, take your pick. I'd probably go McLaren third because we beat Norwich 6-2 or something. And then I'd chuck, who's left? Kinnear in because... Carver, just stick them in whatever order you want. But actually, out of them five, you know what? I'm going to make an argument for Steve Bruce being 11th. I honestly thought, with the squad he had and all that stuff, I think he was the best.
What do you think, Joe? Do you agree? Or would you change it up a bit?
I don't know. I'm struggling between Allardyce and Bruce, purely because what I've just said, like, he only had half a season. It's hard to judge him on half a season when... I know what you're saying, Kev, completely, by the way, with what he was working with and stuff.
He had a great squad.
I know. But Allardyce literally had like half a season and was, like Michael said, was sacked because the fat man came in and...
Yeah, but if he was doing a good job, he would have made himself unsackable, wouldn't he? So he wasn't pulling up any trees where Ashley was like, well, I can't get rid of him. You know, if he won like 12 out of his first 20 and then drew about 5 and we were sat 6th, it would be impossible for him to get sacked. So,
I know that, but look at how many managers we have who have not done that as well and who haven't been sacked by January.
Yeah, that's why he's the worst. That's why I think Bruce is better, personally. I just think Bruce is better than Allardyce.
I'm on the fence because I hate them all. I don't like any of them.
I don't hate them.
I'm saying I hate them, right? I just dislike all of the ones you've just mentioned.
I defended Bruce for a long, long time until I just couldn't anymore, but I did defend him. I don't mind Bruce.
Oh, no, because he made some really stupid statements, stupid mistakes.
Michael deserves credit here, by the way. What a question that is. And I would love to see what people comment on this episode about who do we rank as the best out of them.
It's a great debate, I'll be honest. But Michael, I'm going to flip it back on you. What order would you put them in?
So I was Bruce, Allardyce, McLaren, Kinnear, and Carver. The exact ranking I gave it to you. Yeah, there you go.
Fair play.
Exactly the same. Well done, Michael. High five.
Mainly because it's one of those where Allardyce, I remember it being absolutely terrible, and I remember being a young lad and being like, I'm struggling here because this is terrible. Well, under Bruce, I'd never wavered. I always wanted to still watch the game. I always still wanted to go watch with, like going to the 0-0 against Norwich, where I don't think either team had a shot on target. I was still coming out of that and going, you know what, lads, let's go to the pub, have a good time. Let's, it's a match day. It's going to be brilliant. So I have to give Bruce that. For me, my time knowing Steve Bruce as a manager was better than knowing Sam Allardyce. But I'm interested, Kinnear or Carver for you, Joanne? Who's bottom?
Honestly, because it's the bottom, I'm struggling to really care what order they're in. So we're just sticking with what you guys said.
Stop ruining it. It's good.
Well, no, I'm going to stick with what you guys have said is what I mean. Because I literally couldn't pick between. I'll be picking for the same sake of picking. So I'm going to go with what you guys have said. I agree. Stick with the same 5. That's
the greatest coach in the world is in last place. And
he deserves it, really, for being big-headed.
Sorry, John. He beat West Ham at home 3-0.
Oh. And I think we beat Hull City as well. Remy Cabert getting his only goal for the club. Happy times. But that was that is the illustrious last place as the worst Newcastle manager in Premier League history. And before we find out who the very best Newcastle manager has been, which is ultimately a lot better of a conversation, we're going to stick with the theme of best with our next sponsor,
Oh, yeah.
the Global Sports Podcast Network.
Super sub, here we come. The Global Sports Podcast Network is changing the face of football podcasting with dedicated daily content for every Premier League team. Women's football, it has a dedicated Premier League wrap-up, and it comes in 5 different languages. This is your one-stop shop for your daily football fix. Find the Global Sports Podcast Network wherever you find your usual podcasts.
Absolutely cracking. Thank you very much. So we've uncovered who the worst manager in Premier League history is, and to be honest, not just the worst Newcastle manager, the literal worst manager. So we've got that bottom 5, but I actually had a bottom 6, and I took one person out. So my number 10 seed was Ruud Gullit, and you'll both probably remember Gullit a little bit better than I do. Who was a better manager and this is for Newcastle, not overall, Steve Bruce or Ruud Gullit?
You know what, Bruce?
I'd probably
All
say
right.
Bruce,
I'd put Bruce
There we
above
go.
Gullit.
No, I would.
Gullit had again. He had
Had some better times, ironically, under Bruce.
Dalglish killed Keegan's squad, but he still had a relatively good squad to work with and was still absolutely hopeless. And I mean, who drops? You know what, right? Steve Bruce might be a bad manager, but who drops Alan Shearer for a time-way derby? There's no way Brucey dropping Shearer for a time-way derby. So you know what? Gullit, you've gone down even more. Bruce, welcome to the top 10, son.
Oh, beautiful. I might as well have asked Gullit or Carver. But that leads to our top 10, where I want to play a little bit of a game of this or that. So we're going to start off with a man we've already decided on. 10th seed, Stevie Bruce, moving up the rankings.
Good man.
Or
it's going to end up in the top 5, isn't he? Can you imagine? He's going to just bit by bit climb his way up.
Steve Bruce or Kevin Keegan?
I'm
kidding.
That's a tough one.
Steve Bruce or Chris Hughton?
Oh, Chris Hughton.
Yeah,
no,
Hughton all
Chris
day long. Always have a special place in our hearts at Newcastle
Massive soft
United for
spot
Chris
for him,
Hughton.
And I was hoping he'd say that to lead up to Chris Hughton versus his successor, Alan Pardew. Who was a better manager for Newcastle?
And I just love Hughton, so I've got a real issue here. I've got such a soft spot for Hughton that I'm going to struggle to pick.
I was one of them fans.
Even though we had some good times under Pardew as well.
I was one of them fans who went nuts when Hughton went for no apparent reason and Pardew came in as the most random appointment ever. But you know what? Was the right decision because Pardew got us 5th. He got us to a quarter-final of the Europa League. I'm going Pardew over Hughton just in terms of what we did for Newcastle. But in terms of which one I liked more, I probably liked Hughton. But I didn't dislike Pardew. I just think Pardew he had better times. Pardew.
We had some good times. We did.
Very bleak. Also, it was good times in such a bleak period for the club, and I think that's more impressive. And I don't know if it was all down to him or if it was our scout, what do you call him, thingy car, but the team Pardew had, that was such a streets will never forget team. So
it was.
Yeah, Pardew for building that team.
Oh, I believe that's 1-1, and I will say I do have Pardew above Hughton myself, so I will be the decider there.
I'm with you. It's fine. I am with you on the Pardew. It's just my soft spot for Hughton. That's all that took over.
I get it.
So
I get it. So Alan Pardew or Glenn Roeder, who was a better manager for Newcastle?
Oh, God rest his soul.
Yeah.
You know what, Glenn Roeder, when he first kicked, we were 14th and we finished 7th that season.
Yeah.
But then the full-time season after that. I'm going to go Pardew because he kept it a little bit more steady over a longer period of time. And people forget, Pardew left us to go to Palace. I know he was pretty much getting hounded out. And Ashley just didn't want to sack him. So I'm not that silly in terms of he left us. He was pretty much getting hounded out. But he still left us in 14th. He took over us in 12th. And in between that, we had 5th and a couple of decent finishes. So for stability, I'm going Pardew over Roeder. I didn't mind the Roeder years, but Pardew.
Nah.
I'll agree with that.
Okay, spot on. Now we'll move on to one of Newcastle's most favourite managers. Alan Pardew or Graham Souness, who was better for Newcastle?
Go on, that one's easy.
Pardew.
Yep, Pardew. Souness just destroyed. He started just.
I really don't like him either.
He started picking fights with Bellamy and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
just keep Robson's team. Do what Robson was doing. You would have been fine.
Yeah.
But when he picked a fight with Robert, he picked a fight with Bellamy, he picked a fight with Dyer. I was like, honestly, get gone. You're a nightmare. So yeah, Pardew much better than Souness.
Yeah.
Oh, so does Alan Pardew make it into the top 5? Well, that's going to be decided when we do Alan Pardew versus Kenny Dalglish.
100%. Dalglish killed Keegan's squad.
Yeah, I was going to say Pardew.
Yeah, Pardew. 100%. Not even.
I dislike Dalglish.
I would get
What's so
Dalglish
wrong with the
below.
Dalglish era?
I would put Dalglish below Roda. Who else have we just mentioned?
So would I.
Who was
I've
one
got
before
a
Roda?
massive dislike for Dalglish.
Houghton.
Yeah, I'd put Houghton above Dalglish.
I would put Houghton above him
We
as
were in
well,
the
yeah.
championship. We were in the championship, and we needed stability and somebody to really do a job. I mean, Dalglish took over when we just finished second in the league. I know Dalglish ended up finishing second, but he literally decided to sell Ginola and Ferdinand and bring in 39-year-old Ian Rush and 37-year-old John Barnes or something. Absolutely ridiculous. So
It still
Dalglish
made
is well
2
down
finals? 2 finals, second place?
Nah, hopeless.
But still worse than Roda.
Keegan's team, and he still destroyed it.
True. So that puts Alan Pardew into the top 5 Newcastle managers of the Premier League era.
Well done, AP.
But I think this might be where his run ends as we decide who was better for Newcastle, Alan Pardew or Rafael Benitez.
Benitez.
Oh, there's a quiet from Kev.
I don't think Benitez.
I'm not saying there's a massive gulf, by the way. I'm not saying I'm just answering it
Rafa, I remember going to a
answer.
championship game and Rafa sat 11 men behind the ball at home to Burton and we won 1-0. That was bad time. I don't... Rafa,
You're just gonna do no more.
other than his reputation, no, but every game, I remember City at home, he would just... And I know Man City were brilliant, but we never attacked. And I was like, do you not get Newcastle at all?
It wasn't the most attractive football,
attack. You're playing Burnley at home in the Premier League in the first season. Back up, attack, please attack. And I know he didn't have a good squad. I know he had Ashley, but so did Pardew. And Pardew found a way to build these players. For me, I much preferred watching Newcastle United under Alan Pardew than I did under Rafa Benitez, and that will get so much hate. So bring it on. But I'd put Pardew above Rafa. Just in terms of Newcastle. Overall CV, Rafa. Just Newcastle.
Yeah, because I know what's coming up. I'm starting to get concerned already because obviously we know who we're going to end with here, and I'm already starting to panic on who I'm going to pick.
Pardew ended 4th for me personally, and he's our 4th best Premier League manager. It ended 4th because there's no way can these top 3 can Pardew get above. But Rafa, I did like Rafa. I love that he stayed with us, and I love that he got us through the championship and he got us back into the Prem. But his finishes in the Premier League were very similar to Bruce Benitez's, and the football wasn't that much better. So yeah, Pardew for me.
Okay. What about you, Joanne? Who are you saying?
Let's just move on to top 3 because I'm already nervous about it.
You got to make a decision.
I'm
going to get ridiculed. I'm going to get ridiculed.
I've got to stick. Look,
Pardew above Rafa.
It's all right. I'm going to stick to my guns anyway because I did say Rafa straight off the bat, so I've got to stick with it. But what you need to understand is I'm picking Rafa as a kind of it's not by a huge margin. Is all I'm trying to say. Yeah.
I will say I do have Benitez slightly above Pardew. I did have a signed Rafa Benitez picture on my wall at home. I definitely didn't have a signed Alan Pardew. And if I did, it probably would have been for the dance in the cup final.
I was just about to say my favourite was the dance.
Palace. Yeah. He did a good job at Palace.
He did. He's actually quite an underrated manager, if I'm completely honest. But moving on, very quickly, this one's going to be Rafael Benitez or Eddie Howe.
Eddie.
Eddie.
Come on.
Eddie's doing it.
Because I put Pardew above Rafa, I would have put Eddie above Pardew as well, obviously.
He's lying.
Yeah, Eddie was beating whoever came there. This is where it gets hard.
So we are going to move on, and I'm trying to think of which one of the top 2 I've seeded that I'm going to give you. But Eddie Howe or Sir Bobby Robson?
I've got to pick Robson. I've got to. I can't not.
Well, Bobby, yeah.
I just can't.
Oh my God.
It hurts because it... But this is where this top 3 was going to be hard because obviously we know who's coming next as well.
You know what?
But I'm going to try
and justify it. I can't remember
Go on
saying.
then.
I'd probably put Bobby second, by the way, which will cause more unrest because that means one man has to drop the third. Anyway, I'm going to go Eddie Howe just because the way he's coached players like Murphy and Longstaff. I mean, Bobby Robson had Gary Speed, Lauren Robert, Nobby Solano, Alan Shearer, Craig Bellamy, Kieran Dyer, Jonathan Woodgate, Olivia Bernard,
Andy Griffin.
Go on,
Even
Michael.
then, I feel like at their disposal of both their teams, which finished fourth, Robson had more at his disposal in terms of a squad. Eddie Howe's had to pretty much force it with players like Murphy and them. So it's going to be unpopular. I love Bobby. You know what? Bobby Robson is probably still my favourite Newcastle United manager ever because when I was growing up, that was like my first team I fell in love with. And maybe I'm overrating some of the players because of that. But in terms of just as a coach and as a manager and what they got out of players, I'm going to go Eddie Howe.
Ooh.
Which I
To
don't
be honest,
like doing
that dude is...
because that's the first I fell in love with, first manager I fell in love with. But I just feel like, imagine Eddie Howe if he had Robert, Speed, Dyer, Solano, Shearer, Bellamy as a front six. Imagine Eddie Howe.
Robert being Saudi by now, it's all right.
True.
It's a joke before anyone kills me. But no, what about you, Joanne? How can you do it? How above Robson, or is it Robinson?
I can't.
Robson in number 2.
Robson. I can't. Sorry, Eddie, is all I'm saying. Which
leaves it to me to decide who's number 2. Is it the man that made me fall in love with football?
Same.
Or
go
is it the modern day... I'm not going to say Messiah because that's cringy as it comes. But I am going to say Bobby Robson did more for Newcastle overall, but he did it with a better squad. I will say that. Mm-hmm. So I think Robson's one of the reasons why people stayed in love with Newcastle United after Keegan. If it had continued the way it was going with Dalglish, then into Hullett, if you had another bad manager after that, I think... Yeah, with Leeds coming up as well, I think everyone would have sat there and gone, you know what, Newcastle, not bothered anymore.
Can I be honest as well? As someone who is older than the pair of you, yeah.
Good to point out.
I think everyone knows if they don't already, they're going to know again. But yeah, I mean, I've got 10 years on you, Kev. I've got 13 years on you. I can't remember how old you are, Michael. But you're in your 20s.
Really
I'm not.
young.
Oh, thanks. I'm really old, obviously. But and again, I suppose this again boils down to age, isn't it? Like the relevance Robson had on my life in comparison to you guys. I mean, how old were you in 99?
I was 3.
So he had no impact on your life. Kev, how old were you?
He did.
Yeah, not really. I know, but you know what I mean. Not as emotional connection as I had to Robson is all I mean. Like when he was an actual manager. Yeah. It's just
I was 6 when he first came in, but my 2004 team and 2003 team, I was obviously 10, 11.
So when you first started to get into it,
it was the first team I fell in love with, and that's why I found it so hard to pick Eddie Howe. But I tried to take my emotional attachment to Bobby and them class. But like Bobby had Shearer. Imagine if Howe had Shearer at his disposal alongside Isaac.
He wouldn't have Isaac and Shearer playing together.
No,
I know
but
this
what
is
I mean
a
is,
mad thing to say, right?
If
it wouldn't happen.
Okay, so take Isaac out of it. Imagine if Eddie Howe had Shearer, Bellamy, Kieran Dyer, who had like 40-odd caps for England, Gary Speed, who was one of the best midfielders in the league, Lauren Robert, best left foot we've ever seen at St James's, Nobby Solano, best crosser we've ever seen at St James. Bobby had a lot of the best we've ever seen at St James's. Eddie doesn't have that, and that's why I think as a manager, I'm taking the first team I fell in love with and the first manager I fell in love with. The reason I fell in love with Newcastle pretty much is Bobby and that team. But if I take that away, I've got to put Eddie just in terms of being a manager because of how well he's done with not as good players.
Well, this is why this is such a hard conversation. And again, it's going to go back to different generations because Robson's not the reason I fell in love with football. Ozzy Ardiles was the manager when I started going to the stadium.
Wow, what a geezer.
There we go. I was only young, by the way. I'm not that old.
Listeners, 1968.
I'm so old. I was only a bear. I was only 9 when I started going.
War had been over for a couple of decades.
It was a hard time.
Mic like Ian Mackay.
I know, exactly. We only lived in black and white. There was no colour. But yeah, like just as like Kevin Keegan, for example, the entertainer. So that was kind of a massive influence on my life. And then by the time Robson, how old am I? Late teens going into my 20s when Robson was manager. So it's just different phases of people's lives, isn't it, really? So yeah, that's all.
100%. So it is begrudgingly Bobby Robson that moves on and Howe unfortunately drops out. But what I will say is that in 5 years' time, I could very easily sit here and say it's Eddie Howe very easily.
I agree.
But I don't have a crystal ball, so we're going to move on.
Howe's got time.
Yeah, exactly. It is going to be Sir Bobby Robson or Kevin Keegan for the top spot and best Newcastle manager of all time. What are we saying, Kev?
I'm going to upset so many people.
Well, that's why I asked you.
I don't know.
Especially Joe.
I think everyone's going to be split on this. You don't know what I'm going to say. I think you might be surprised.
I think, personally, Keegan, with the squad at his disposal, in his refusal to shut up shop and just defend and hang on and claw a trophy home to Newcastle, I think Robson was better for that reason. Because, I mean, come on, Keegan, look, I'm not criticising the bloke, right? Because, I mean, bloody hell, I'm named after him, right? I think. That's what I've been told. Don't know if it's true. I've been told a couple of stories about how I was named Kevin, but Kevin Keegan was manager in '93 and we were mint. So yeah,
take that.
Look, in terms of getting the club, getting the club and the fans, Keegan was unbelievable for an outsider. Whereas obviously Bobby was born in the northeast, but like he should have won that league title. I'm not going to say the words he bottled it, but just change your. Look, I wasn't alive. Joe can remember, and Joe's going to have a much more valid opinion in my head than my own opinion here, because I'm looking at it from an outsider. But you're 12 points clear of Christmas. You've got the likes of Janola, Beardsley, Aspria, Shearer, Ferdinand, Rob Lee, blah, blah, blah. List goes on, Albert. How on earth can you not just sell your soul for a little bit and just stick 5 men at the back and just knock on just win the league? Just bring the league home. Just give us something in the 90s. And for that reason, I'm going to go Robson. I know I'll upset a lot of the older listeners, and my dad will be absolutely screaming at us right now if he's listening to this episode. I'm not criticising Keegan. I love him. I love the interviews. I love the passion. I love the way he still talks about the club. I loved it when he met Eddie Howe. I was there when we did that thing with Pete Graves. I love Kevin Keegan. I really do. But just in terms of managers, if I've got to pick between Robson and Keegan, I'm picking Robson. But again, I think what Joe said before should be mentioned. Robson was my first proper team I fell in love with, so I've always got a soft spot for them. Just not soft enough to put them in front of Eddie Howe.
Absolutely lush. What about you, Joanne? Who are you saying? Kevin Keegan or Sir Bobby Robson? Who was our best manager of all time?
So yeah, I mean, Kev's right in the sense of I've got some massive core memories of my footballing life from the Entertainers time, and it's stuff that will be ingrained in my brain until the day I die or until I lose my mind. That could happen very soon.
That's not far off.
It's not far off, is it really? I'm on the downward slide already.
Yeah, you're showing your age, born in the 30s.
Hey, you cheeky. Yeah, I'll stop.
Almost got to swear on this episode.
We've already had a couple. I've got Ed to do.
Hey, there's none.
Clean
no,
sheet.
he was my kind. As much as I said like Ozzy Dordelis, I was still very young with Ozzy Dordelis, by the way, because I didn't really fall in love with his team or anything, and he wasn't here long enough anyway. But the Entertainers, I'll be honest, the season we lost that league, because we did lose the league, it was ours. Yeah. In our hearts, we honestly felt like we'd won it, man. It's just, I still feel the heartbreak all these years later. So I've, to cut a long story short, Sir Bobby's my man still. So,
okay, and I'm sorry for bringing up those memories.
I felt like I was really going down a very sad avenue right there, so I thought I'm just going to give my answer and shut up.
Joe, who would you pick out of Eddie Howe and Kevin Keegan? Imagine if Eddie had the Entertainers team.
Oh, no.
Well, while Joe thinks of that, I'm going to flip it on you, Kev. Would you say Eddie Howe's our best manager ever?
Yep, 100%. Yep.
Because I was thinking that when we got the final three, and I was sitting there going,
I'm not like, honestly, them three are amazing. Like, I've already talked about my soft spot for Bobby and that team, but I'm trying to take away all them emotional connections to them players. And I just think, and this isn't going to be no surprise to anybody, because I've backed Eddie Howe religiously and relentlessly for as long as anybody's been listening to this. What Eddie Howe has done with them players, he's conned us into thinking we're good players and we're not. Bobby didn't need to con us.
Yeah.
Bobby didn't need to con us because he had really good, and Keegan didn't need to con us because he had really, really good world-class football players. So for me, and I feel like Eddie's got more than one way of playing, whereas maybe them two, it was do it this way or don't do it at all. Eddie Howe's went 5-5-0. He shut up shop at times. He's went negative. He's caught teams on the counter-attack. He's tried to control the ball a little bit better. He's played high-intensity football. He's working under ridiculous constraints financially, whereas Robson and Keegan never had to. Keegan could just buy £15 million world record Alan Shearer. I know he didn't get to have him for long because he left not long after. But and also Bobby Robson could just spend and spend and spend. And if he wanted Woodgate, he would get him. And if he wanted Lee Bowyer, he would get him. If he wanted Kieran Dyer from Ipswich, he would get him. So for me, I think in terms of a coach and as a manager and with constraints, and Eddie Howe has to live with the expectation. We both had massive expectation, we did, but this is a new generation. And where we took over 19th in the league, everybody had us written off. Richest club in the championship, we were getting called. To see what he's done with that squad, and we haven't really. You mentioned some of the signings before, so smart players like Dan Burn and stuff. I thought Dan Burn was hopeless, and when I watch him for Newcastle, I love him. So yeah, I would put Eddie Howe number one personally, but that might age like milk in about a year's time.
I tell you what, I wanted you to say something that might get clipped. You've gone above and beyond what I was going to say, and to be honest, that does actually track with what Kev said for about the last 6 months. And I can see why he got so passionate when I said that, maybe Eddie Howe was, under pressure before that Arsenal 1-0 victory, which was brilliantly followed up by a 3-1 win at Forest. What a win that was. But I've gave you time to think, Joe. Was it Eddie Howe or Kevin Keegan?
I'm going to answer you with a really weird reply. I'm going to say Eddie Howe, based on the fact that I think he's going to be number one eventually. I think he's going to take over Sir Bobby.
Joe's giving you nothing this episode,
it's not.
Michael.
No, I have. I'm just being totally honest with you.
This episode.
Disgraceful.
All right, Keegan, stuff you. He's going to shove your stupid Eddie Howe back down into third. But listen to what I'm saying, Kev. I honestly believe if Howe stays, and I really, God, want him to stay, in the next few years, and he continues on the trajectory he's on, he's going to take over the pair of them, and he's going to be number one. He's
winning a trophy in 2 months, and that's something
that's what I mean. I'm just saying right now, as it is, Sir Bobby's top, but I think Howe will become top. I do. I've got faith that he's going to stay.
Bobby second,
and become
Keegan
top.
third, Eddie Howe one.
Yeah, basically that'll be the top three at that point. I hope in a couple of years' time we're still doing this, and it's Howe, Bobby, Keegan.
That's what it is now. Yeah, that's what it will be in the future. That's life.
That's fine. You do you, but
And before we get into UFC 3, whatever it is, this month, we have uncovered that John Carver is the worst Premier League manager of all time. Sir Bobby Robson is our best, I will agree. Eddie Howe is a second, apparently, according to the panel. Let us know what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree?
We've got top 10. That's more surprising than any of them.
I think so many people are going to slag us for that one. That's hilarious.
Yeah, if there's anything you disagree with.
Top 4 for me, Pardew.
Top 5 in
I've
life.
Upset so many
top
people.
5 in a season.
Fifth, and I've put Eddie Howe 1. I have upset so many people.
And
I can't wait to get your dad to do his list. He's gonna totally slam you. It's gonna be hilarious.
My dad won't like me putting Keegan third, I don't think.
No.
Well, we'll soon find out. And if you disagree with anything that the panel have said, let us know in the comments, on the socials, anywhere you find the Daily Newcastle. But for now, it's all from us, and we'll see you next time.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.